My name is Derek. I'm 35 and I fix cars for a living. Been doing it since I was 18. My dad ran the garage before me. Small place just off Main Street. Nothing fancy, but folks in this town know me. I keep their engines running, change their oil, rotate their tires. It's honest work, and most days that's enough. I live alone in a two-bedroom house I inherited from my aunt. No kids, no pets. Got divorced 3 years ago. We weren't bad together, just not good. Sometimes people outgrow each other, or maybe we never really fit in the first place. I used to think that made me a failure. Now I just think I learned something. My life is simple. Wake up at 6, while eat coffee, garage. By 7 home, work until 5 or 6, home by sunset. Microwave dinner, maybe a game on the TV, then bed. It's not glamorous, but it's quiet. And after the last few years, I learned to appreciate quiet. Anyway, that Thursday night was supposed to be like any other. I just finished changing a transmission on an old Dodge when I decided to head home early. Sky was turning orange, that golden kind of evening light, when I saw her. She was parked to the side of the road, hood popped open, hazard lights blinking. She looked like she didn't know whether to curse at the engine or cry. I pulled over instinctively. Guess it's the mechanic in me. You see someone stranded, you stop. Need a hand, I asked as I walked up. She turned to me. Blonde hair pulled back in a loose braid navy cardigan over a faded dress. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired from a long day, but the kind that's lived in you for years. Still, there was something calm about her. It just died, she said. Won't even turn over. I peeked under the hood, jiggled a couple of wires, tapped the starter with my wrench, and asked her to try again. Nothing. Starter was fried. Looks like you'll need a tow, I said. I can call one for you, or if you don't mind, I can tow you to my shop. Won't charge you tonight. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. You're not trying to kidnap me, are you? I laughed. Only if you're hiding a winning lottery ticket. She cracked a smile, the first real one, and nodded. All right, I trust you. 15 minutes later, we were back at my garage. I told her I'd have to order the part, but it'd be ready by Saturday. She said she didn't live far, walked most places. When I offered her a ride home, she paused. Actually, she said, do you mind coming in for tea? Just as a thank you. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who gets invited in by strangers, but something about her gentle, genuine made me say yes. Her place was cozy, small, filled with books and plants, old photographs on the walls. She poured me chamomile tea and we sat in the living room. She told me her name was Molly. I told her mine. You own the garage, right? She asked. Yeah, took it over after my dad passed. She nodded slowly, sipped her tea. I remember him. He used to fix my husband's truck. Silence fell for a second. She didn't say more, and I didn't press, but I got the sense she hadn't said his name out loud in a while. We talked for over an hour about books, the town, bad coffee, good music. It felt easy, natural, like we'd known each other longer than an evening. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Her eyes lingered a moment longer than I expected. Then she said, you're the first person I've had tea with in maybe a year. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and smiled. Thanks again for stopping, she added. It meant more than you think. I got in my truck, drove off, and couldn't stop thinking about her the rest of the night. I didn't expect to see her again so soon. Saturday started like most Saturdays, slow, quiet, with the hum of the shop radio keeping me company while I worked. I'd installed the new starter in Molly's truck the night before. Everything checked out. It turned over clean. Battery was solid, connections tight. Around 9 a.m., I left her a voicemail to let her know it was ready whenever she wanted to swing by. By 2 on in the afternoon, I'd almost forgotten about it. I was elbow deep in the undercarriage of an old Ford when I heard the bell above the garage door chime. I slid out from under the car and wiped my hands on a rag. And there she was. Same quiet presence, same cardigan, only this time she wore it over a white blouse and jeans. Her hair was up in a loose twist, and she looked a little more rested, like maybe she'd actually slept the night before. But what caught me most was how she smiled when she saw me. Genuine soft, like we were already old friends. Hey, she said, stepping just inside the garage. Hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said, dropping the rag on the workbench. Your truck's ready to go. Already she raised her eyebrows. That was fast. Well, I skipped lunch, I said, half joking. Figured I owed it to you for the tea. She laughed a little, then glanced around the shop. You always work alone. Most of the time. My cousin used to help out, but he moved to Dallas last year. She nodded, then looked at the truck. So what do I owe you? Handed her the invoice. It wasn't much, just parts and a little labor. I kept it honest. She reached into her purse. Can I Venmo you? Sure, I said. Or you can pay Monday if that's easier. She looked at me for a second like she was searching my face for something, maybe trying to decide if I meant that. You always this generous? She asked, voice low. I shrugged. Only when I like the tea. That made her laugh, a real laugh this time, warm, sudden, like it surprised even her. And I knew then I wanted to hear that sound again. Okay, tea it is, she said. My place. Lead the way. This time she didn't hesitate. We drove over in our own trucks, but I followed her down some winding back streets to a little cul-de-sac I didn't even know existed. Her house was tucked between tall trees, a little blue cottage with a garden in front that looked half wild and half loved. There were wind chimes on the porch and a bird feeder hanging from a low branch swaying gently in the breeze. Inside, her place was even more her than I remembered. Books everywhere, soft lighting over old records stacked by the player. It smelled faintly of lavender and coffee grounds. She handed me a mug as I sat down on the couch. This time, no tea, she said. You look like a coffee guy. Guilty, I said, taking a sip. It was strong, dark, no sugar, exactly how I like it. We talked. This time the conversation went deeper. She asked more about my life. I told her about the garage, how I'd taken it over when my dad passed from a heart attack 5 years ago, how I kept it small, local, no big expansion plans, just enough to pay the bills and do right by people. Then she opened up, really opened up. When Henry died, she said, staring at the rim of her cup, everything just stopped. One day I had a life, a partner, a routine. The next I was just floating. I didn't say anything, didn't need to. Sometimes silence says enough. I used to have friends, she went on, but they didn't know what to say after he was gone. So they said nothing. Invitations stopped. Phone got quiet. I became the woman people pitied but didn't invite. I'm sorry, I said. She looked at me. You don't have to be. It just is. Later, we moved to the porch. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the floorboards. She leaned back in the wooden chair, her legs curled under her, sipping slowly. I forgot what this felt like, she murmured. What company, real company? Someone who sees me as more than just a widow. There was a long pause, not awkward, just thoughtful, like the kind that happens when something's starting to change, and you both feel it but aren't quite ready to say it. As the sky started turning gold, I stood to leave. She walked me out, and when I reached my truck, she called out softly, Derek. I turned. She stood in the doorway again, one hand on the frame, the other holding her coffee cup. Would it be weird if I asked you to come by again sometime? Not for the truck, just for coffee or conversation or silence? I smiled. Not weird at all. Good, she said, a little more sure of herself now, because I think I'd like that. So would I. The days passed like they always did, slow, predictable, but there was something different now. A subtle shift. The conversations with Molly didn't feel like casual exchanges anymore. Each time we spoke, whether it was at the shop or on the phone, it was like the air between us carried an unspoken tension, a quiet understanding that neither of us had fully acknowledged yet. It had been 2 days since I left her house after that coffee. She called me that morning asking if I could look at her washing machine. It had stopped working. She tried to keep the tone light, but I could tell there was something more beneath her words. I didn't mind, of course. I'd been more than happy to help with anything. Though in hindsight, I realized I didn't know why she was so insistent on calling me. I'd fixed washing machines before. I wasn't a plumber, but I could usually figure things out. What I didn't expect was what would happen when I walked into her house that afternoon. When I arrived, Molly was sitting in the living room reading a book. She looked up as I walked in, and the smile on her face was different, almost hesitant, like she was bracing for something. But she didn't say anything about it. She just nodded toward the laundry room. Thanks for coming, she said softly. It's probably nothing, but I've had issues before. I gave a small nod and followed her into the room. The washing machine was newer, maybe 2 or 3 years old, but it wasn't turning on. I crouched down, pulled off the panel, and started checking the connections. It didn't take long to find the problem, a loose wire. the kind of thing you'd never expect, but it was an easy fix. As I worked, I could feel her presence in the room. She wasn't saying much, but I could tell she was watching me closely. When I finished, I stood up and wiped my hands on a rag. "It's good to go now," I said. "Just needed a little tightening." "Thanks," she said again, but her voice was different, softer, almost like she was trying to find the right words. I set the rag down and turned to face her. "Is everything all right?" I asked, a little hesitant. I didn't want to push, but I felt like something was off. She hesitated for a moment before speaking, her eyes looking anywhere but at me. Then finally she sighed and looked up. "I don't know what I'm doing, Derek," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect any of this. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling that familiar knot form in my stomach. This was more than just about a washing machine. She was talking about something bigger. "I didn't expect to feel this way," she said. "I didn't expect to have someone to talk to again, someone who actually listens. And then you were just there." It was a long pause. I wasn't sure what to say. "Molly, I know it's crazy," she interrupted. "You've been nothing but kind, but I've spent so long alone that I don't know what to make of any of it." I stood there, my mind racing. She wasn't talking about the truck or the washing machine or the coffee. She was talking about us. "I didn't mean to make things complicated," she continued, her voice almost breaking. After Henry, I thought I was done with it. I thought I was done with everything. I didn't know how to respond. I'd been careful, hadn't I? I kept things simple, kept the boundaries clear. But now it felt like we were both standing at the edge of something, unsure whether to step forward or turn back. "Molly," I said, my voice low, "I'm not here to complicate your life. I'm just trying to help. And if that's all I am to you, that's okay." She shook her head quickly. "No, it's not that simple. It's not just you helping me with things around the house. It's everything how you've been there when no one else was. It's not that I don't appreciate it. I do." She took a deep breath as if preparing herself for something. "But I can't keep pretending I don't feel a something more. I can't keep denying it." There it was, the confession I hadn't expected, but somehow knew was coming. She wasn't just talking about gratitude anymore. She was talking about the way things had changed between us, the way I'd started to fill a space in her life that no one else had even come close to. And I didn't know what to say. I hadn't expected this, hadn't expected her to come right out and say it, but there it was, hanging in the air between us. I stepped closer, my mind still racing. I had to say something. "I'm not trying to rush things, Molly. I don't want to make things harder for you." She smiled softly, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name. "I know, I'm not rushing either. I just wanted you to know that I feel it too, whatever this is." There was nothing more to say after that. She didn't expect an answer from me, and I didn't have one to give. We were both just standing there, taking in the weight of it. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I wasn't sure where this was going, but I was okay with that. The next few days were strange. Things between Molly and me had shifted, but we never spoke of it again. There was this unspoken understanding now, a strange tension that neither of us wanted to address. Yet it lingered in every conversation, every glance. I didn't want to make it awkward, but I couldn't ignore the fact that something had changed between us. I kept busy with work, focusing on the small repairs around the garage and making sure the customers were satisfied, but my mind kept drifting back to her, Molly, and the way she looked at me. The way her words hung in the air after that confession. She had admitted it. She felt something, and I felt something too, but I had no idea how to handle it. I hadn't seen her since that day in her laundry room, but she called me a couple of times after that, each time a little less hesitant, a little more like she was trying to return to normal. And each time I found myself hoping that maybe, just maybe, she'd be more open. But she never was, not really. Then that Friday afternoon, she called me again. It was about the truck, she said. The brakes were making a strange noise. It wasn't a huge deal, but I could tell she was anxious about it. She asked if I could come over after work to take a look. I agreed, of course, because I couldn't say no to her. When I arrived at her place, she was standing outside, her hands tucked in her jacket pockets. The moment she saw me, she smiled, but it was different from the usual smiles. It was softer, almost nervous. "Hey," she said, voice tentative. "Thanks for coming." "Of course," I replied, nodding toward the truck. "Let's take a look." We spent the next few minutes in silence as I looked over the brakes, trying to keep things professional, trying to ignore the tension that seemed to fill the space between us. It was the same old truck. No big surprises, just a bit of wear and tear. After a few minutes, I finished up the inspection and looked up at her. All good, I said. No big deal. You can pick it up tomorrow. She nodded, but she didn't move to leave. Instead, she just stood there watching me like she was weighing something in her mind. It felt like a moment that had been coming for a while, and now it was here, right in front of us. I need to talk to you, she said suddenly, her voice quiet but firm. I put the tools down and looked at her, unsure of what to expect. What's on your mind? I've been thinking a lot lately, she continued, her voice shaking a little. About everything about us, about what I said that day in the laundry room. I swallowed, my heart suddenly racing. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I don't want to make things harder for you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to sound like I had everything under control, but inside I was a mess. She shook her head. It's not that. I don't want to make things harder for you either. But I can't keep pretending nothing has changed. I can't keep acting like what we've been doing, this back and forth, is just casual. My chest tightened. I knew what she was saying, even if she hadn't quite said it directly. She wasn't talking about the truck anymore. She was talking about us. I know we've both been avoiding this, she went on, her voice gaining strength. But I can't deny how I feel anymore. And I'm tired of pretending I don't want more. I don't want it to be just a widow anymore, Derek. I don't want to be alone, and I don't want to keep living in the past. I stood there for a moment, processing her words. Everything inside me was telling me to pull back, to keep my distance, but I couldn't not anymore. I took a deep breath, finally stepping closer to her. Molly, I don't want to rush things. I don't want to complicate your life, but I can't deny that I feel the same way. She let out a breath, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled genuinely, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. You're not the only one, she said softly, stepping a little closer. But I don't want to take this slow anymore. I'm tired of waiting for the perfect moment. I just want to know if you feel this too. I nodded. I do feel it. And just like that, everything changed. The uncertainty, the tension, it all melted away, replaced by something I hadn't expected to find so quickly. The fear, the hesitation, the fear of making the wrong move, it all disappeared. What was left was a quiet, simple truth. We were both tired of pretending. We didn't need to say anything more. Without words, we both knew what this was. She leaned in, hesitating for just a moment. I met her halfway, and when our lips finally touched, it wasn't rushed or desperate. It was just right. And in that moment, I realized that whatever came next, I was ready to face it. The days after that night were different. There was no going back, no pretending we didn't feel what we felt. The air between Molly and me had shifted, but in the best way possible. We didn't rush anything. We took our time, letting the relationship unfold at its own pace. But it wasn't just the attraction, it was the connection we had developed over weeks of conversations, shared experiences, and quiet moments. I think we both knew that this wasn't something that could be easily ignored. Neither of us was the kind of person who could go on living in denial. And after the kiss, everything felt so much clearer. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little nervous every time I saw her. The weight of what we had, the unknown of it all, was just different. But the longer I spent with her, the more I realized I didn't want to go back to the way things were before. I didn't want to be the guy who was just there to fix things around the house anymore. I didn't want to just be the neighbor who occasionally helped with a broken washer or a faulty truck. I wanted more, and I could tell she did too. It was a Friday afternoon when she called me again, asking if I had time to come over. I didn't hesitate to say yes, even though I had a ton of work piling up at the shop. I wanted to be with her. That was all I could think about. When I arrived, she was standing outside as usual, waiting for me with that soft smile I had come to cherish. But this time there was something different about her, something more assured. I've been thinking, she said as we walked inside, about what we talked about. I nodded, my heart thumping in my chest. I knew what she was talking about, but part of me still wasn't sure where we stood. I realized something. She went on, her voice steady now. I'm not afraid of this anymore, Derek. I'm not afraid of what it could be, of what we could be. The words settled over me like a weight, but it wasn't heavy. It was reassuring. It was what I'd been waiting for, though I hadn't known it until now. I'm not either, I said. I want this, Molly. I want to see where this goes. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I don't want to let this go. She reached out, taking my hand in hers, and we stood there for a moment, just holding on to each other. There was no grand speech, no elaborate promises, just two people realizing that sometimes all you need to move forward is the courage to take the first step. A few weeks later, we were sitting at my kitchen table having coffee, and the conversation took a turn I hadn't expected. Molly had been talking about her life, how she had spent so long trying to live up to the expectations placed on her as a wife, a mother, and even as a widow. And now, after all this time, she was finally learning how to live for herself. I think I've forgotten what it means to live for me, she said, looking down at her cup. I spent so much time living for others that I lost track of what I wanted, what I needed. And I think I've been doing that for so long that I forgot how to even think about the future, about what I wanted next. But now with you, it feels like maybe I could finally figure that out. I sat there quietly listening. I could feel her uncertainty, but I could also sense her strength. She was doing something I hadn't realized she was capable of. She was choosing to move forward, to embrace the future no matter how unknown it might be. And in that moment, I realized that she wasn't just opening up to me. She was opening up to herself. I don't know what the future looks like either, I said, my voice steady, but I know I want you in it. I know I want to figure this out with you together. She smiled. Her eyes softened. I'm ready, Derek. I'm ready to stop being just a widow. I'm ready to live to find out what's next with you, if you'll have me. The air between us felt warm, filled with possibilities, and I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together. We didn't need to have everything figured out right away. We didn't need to know where this relationship would lead. The truth was, we had already taken the biggest step just by being honest with each other. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. We didn't need to rush, didn't need to have all the answers. We could take it one day at a time, figuring things out as we went along. Molly leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to my lips, and I felt a surge of warmth flood through me. It wasn't a dramatic moment. There were no fireworks or grand gestures, just the simple truth of two people who had found something real in each other and who were willing to fight for it. We'll figure it out, I whispered, holding her close together. And for the first time, it felt like we were both ready to let go of the past and look ahead, ready to start something new, something real. And that was enough. This heartfelt story from the Eva's Store channel beautifully captures the quiet transformative power of human connection. Derek, a reserve mechanic, and Molly, a widow, carrying years of loneliness, find solace in each other through simple acts of kindness, a roadside rescue, a cup of tea, a fixed washing machine. The slow, authentic unfolding of their bond, from cautious conversations to a courageous leap into something more, feels deeply real and moving. It's a reminder that love and healing often bloom in unexpected moments, rooted in mutual understanding and vulnerability. The story's strength lies in its understated honesty, showing how two people can rediscover life's possibilities by taking small, brave steps together. Here's a question for you. If you were in Derek or Molly's shoes, would you have the courage to embrace an unexpected connection, even if it meant stepping out of your comfort zone, or would you hesitate to avoid complicating your life?